It was originally titled Northwest Passage. The commission at the time, I think they partnered with the Junior League of Boise and a couple other civic organizations to help raise funds for the project. So they commissioned John Mason, and he created this work that was composed of 3 very sort of sleek, minimal, rectangular frames. They were quite large, and they were placed in a grouping on the plaza here outside of what was then the new City Hall. The work was very much in line with what was happening in contemporary art at the time, which was leaning more towards minimalism and kind of geometric abstract forms. And the artist talked about it being sort of a way to frame the different perspectives of the city. So you could kind of move around the piece in sculptural sense and look through the different frames and get different perspectives of the city. Well, the Boise population at that time wasn't really ready for that kind of, contemporary art statement. So it was a huge backlash from the community at the time. Over the course of the next few years, basically lobbied the mayor and the commission to remove the work, and they were successful at that, and the work was removed in the early 80s. It went into storage and kind of sat in storage for at least a decade, and then it was finally recited at where it lives now by the Boise Art Museum. So it's just the north of the entrance of the Boise Art Museum, somewhat shrouded by trees now. When it was recited, the artist was not happy with it, and under his copyright, his rights, his intellectual property rights, he elected to remove his name from the piece. And so he technically, I think, doesn't claim it as his own work now, and it was renamed Point of Origin, which kind of is a nod back to the point of origin, or the origin of the collection here. But because of the response from the community at that time, the commission didn't really pursue funding any other substantial exterior public artworks within that time, with the exception of a few works. The new artwork out there is Cottonwoods. It's by Dwaine Carver and Zach Hill. They're a local team, and that project will be dedicated later this year after 7 years in the works. We knew it was going to be a major renovation to that space, and it was going to qualify for the percent funds, and it was maybe a means to rectify the the ill past of artwork being placed in that plaza before. Because of the prominence of the location and the budget at the time, it still is the largest budget projects that we've ever had at $200,000 for an artwork. There's a lot of scrutiny because it's such a public space. It's prominent being on Capitol Boulevard out in front of the City Hall. It's making a statement about the city. And so everyone, a lot of people want to have a say in what that might be, or what it might look like, or what it might say. The feedback that we got was the community really wanted local artists to be working on this project, and they wanted it to be something that was truly representational of what we value here at the city. And I think they did a really good job at executing on trying to capture something that was evocative of Boise. One of the recent projects that we completed last year was artist design utility hole covers in the Central Edition. So along Broad Street between 5th and 2nd, they were running new internet cables to attract new business to that area, essentially. And they were, they had to house the utility hole covers in the sidewalk because they have to actually accommodate service workers to get in and out of there. And so having them located in the sidewalk is safer for the workers, but it puts, kind of these large pieces of utilitarian infrastructure into the public right away. It's not a new idea to have artists design utility hole covers, but I think it's just another interesting facet to, where public art can be inserted into the city. And so looking at, Public Works is already spending money on the covers. They're going to typically just stamp that steel with something else. So why not make it something that everybody can enjoy, or at least adds, another layer of interest to the fabric or the textures of the city. There's a lot of works that I like for different reasons. I think works that impacted me as a citizen, the Boise Chinatown viewers, so by Dwaine Carver, I think really try to they cut to some sort of truth, and it's kind of an unexpected, exciting. It kind of shocks you out of your experience in the city. Dwaine Carver's he's a public artist, an architect, a designer, And so this was a project that was funded along with Capital City Development Corporation through the department, and it really focuses on that sort of intersection of public art and history. And so Dwaine was interested in bringing the narrative of the history of Boise's Chinatown back to contemporary Boiseans. And so there's a series of 3, they look like the kind of viewing binoculars that you might see at like the Grand Canyon or at like scenic vistas, but they seemingly look to nowhere in particular. And inside of each of the little compartments is an illuminated photograph. And it's a photograph they're looking at the exact location of the photograph from roughly the 1930s, when the area around City Hall and that corridor of Capitol Boulevard was primarily Boise's Chinatown. And so there's basically no remnants of Chinatown left anymore in contemporary Boise. There's nothing really that you could look to and say, yes, this was Chinatown, or, Chinatown is still thriving here, because it really isn't, and there's nothing here. And so I think it's just a really interesting approach to tying that history in a very tangible way back into the fabric of the contemporary city. As far as an experience goes, I think it's a really interesting experience for a pedestrian or, someone who's just moving about the city to have. I also think, aesthetically, it doesn't necessarily take the form of what a lot of people might expect a piece of art to take. It looks very utilitarian, or could even be completely neglected in passing as some sort of city infrastructure, right? Like the traffic box or a street lamp or a bench or a track. It kind of takes that form, and so that something so seemingly mundane can provide that kind of experience to a viewer unexpectedly, I think is really powerful. A lot of where my interest lies in public art is I think public art has that potential to be like awe-inspiring and unexpected and kind of catch you in a moment that you never would have expected to happen. So I think that's what draws me into that work particularly.